We are live. It's Street Fight Politics. I'm Doc Eddy, and I'm here with Harry Ramsbottom, my co-host, and a guy with a lot of opinions, and we're going to hear them. So, Harry, what's on your mind?
I think the number one thing is just the polls, and I'm not a polls guy. And whether you believe the actual number that's assigned to a poll, whether it's 49 or 59 or whatever, whether you believe that's accurate, what you can learn from them, any poll or any collection of polls, are the trends that are underneath. And right now, what the trends are saying are that Harris and Walz are on the up. They are beating. They are rising, and Trump is falling. And those are all excellent signs.
Yeah, I think the polls actually are underestimating Harris and Walz's strength right now. So it's like,
could be.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the trend is the right direction. As long as you don't change the trend, you're fine.
Yeah, and I think even more heartening is the fact that, okay, on the national level, they're like 8 points ahead, depending on who you want to believe. But in the key states where it really counts, and we're talking Michigan, we're talking Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, they're winning barely. It's within the margin of error, but they have flipped the script on where it was with Biden and Trump, where Trump was 2 points ahead. Now it's Harris and Walz 2 or 3 or 4 points ahead. And I think that's just the beginning of where this is going. I think it's still going to be a very close race. It's going to be a nail biter. I think we should all know that.
I think that
if
it goes like I'm thinking, where you have voters that don't engage until 10, 14 days out, and then finally start doing those. If it follows the current trends, those guys are breaking 8-1 for Harris.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm thinking these polls are not going to be showing that, and you're not going to see it up until the election. I think the surprise is going to be the other way. I think this is going to be a blowout for the Democrats.
Well, and I'm not discounting that. I still would prefer to think that it's going to be a close one. Therefore, I will be happily.
You play like it's close.
Yeah, but it could. And you said something last week about we got to keep the momentum going. We've done really well for the past 2 weeks. They came out of this blush of joy and all of those buzzwords. But next week we go into the convention, and typically parties get bumps out of the convention. Interestingly, the Republicans did not this year. They got nothing, dead flat.
That was Sarah Palin. Shady Vance just came in and walloped their favorability.
But I think that we're going to have the exact opposite effect next week. So we'll see. We'll see. It'll be fun. It'll be fun to have our show next week and see what the first day and a half has been.
Well, it's Chicago, 1968. If you're old enough, can come back. But I seriously don't think that's going to be an issue this year. There's going to be people out protesting, but I think they've got a good plan in there to address that and engage them. It's like
I think Biden stepping down has defanged a lot of that. The people who were angry about Palestine and Gaza and Israel have kind of set back a little bit. They're not opposing Kamala, or at least many of them are not opposing Kamala. That's why you see the big bump in Michigan is largely because of that. So I agree with you. It's not going to be there won't be the blue helmeted police in the streets and riots outside and all of that. It's going to be much more. I hate to use the word, I've already said it, joyful. People are going to be really happy to see this moving forward. Well, so the next thing that I'm kind of excited about, and I think is going to take some more of the fangs out of the arguments against them, is that on Friday, Harris is set to start talking about policy, and it looks like she's going to be doing a speech in North Carolina about inflation and how she intends to fight it. She's already previewed some of this by saying that she's for regulation. That's what she did as the AG. She went after enforcing regulations on some of these crooks, and I think people are actually going to like that. Of course, Wall Street won't like it, but I don't care.
I mean, yeah, and neither do I. I mean, the whole thing, when you look at it, you know, the not just inflation, but housing affordability, and it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, one of the things that really has upset me is the amount of private housing stock that is now owned by Wall Street firms, hedge
Well, yeah.
funds, corporations. I mean, it's getting in some towns where, 1 out of every 10 houses is now owned by private equity.
In
And
Tucson, when I was there as recently as 4 years ago, I think it was 50 some odd percent of the housing in Tucson metro region was rental.
wow.
Most people did not own their own homes, I'm sure it's still that way.
Yeah, I mean, college towns tend to be like that. Somebody comes in, because I actually looked at doing that too when my daughter was at U of A. I was going to buy a house, have her live in it, and then rent it out afterwards. So I would have been contributing to the problem.
You were going to be a college slumlord. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
It is an exciting time to see all this stuff because we haven't seen anything like this happen in a long while. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Of course, right on this, we've got Israel and Iran, and I said last week it could happen any moment, and guess what? It can still happen any moment. It doesn't seem to be going away, no matter what we do. I mean, we actually took the extreme measure of saying that we had sent a missile submarine there. Of course, we've always got one there, probably, but by saying we've done it, that kind of puts notice on the board that we have the ability to launch a lot of flying things and
playing poker, you just turned your ace over.
Yeah. So I think the only thing that's really been holding Iran back so far is the last time they did this, and they launched what? I can't remember. Thousands, 8,000.
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, a thousand things that fly at Israel, and between us and them and some of the Arab allies, we knocked them pretty much all down out of the sky. So that was embarrassing. So they got to do something to be able to not be embarrassed like that again. And I think that's what you're watching here is them picking their time and place and method. But everybody is pretty much thinking it's going to happen, and it could happen any minute. And how big is that going to be? Is it going to turn bigger?
I mean, you were in the military for 28 years. I mean, if the reason that something wider didn't start the last time is they didn't hit anything of any importance.
Well, yeah, it was Biden telling Bibi, take the win. Shut up and take the win.
Yeah. So what if some of these missiles get through, and you have 10, 15,000 people killed?
So Haaretz today, the opposition Israeli newspaper, made the point that Netanyahu has the ability to turn this into a regional war just by going bigger. It's in control. Literally, the ball is in his court. And if he does that, he will probably stay prime minister for as long as that war is ongoing. And that keeps him at jail. That keeps him in power. Yeah. So, he's got a huge incentive if that's what he wants to do. And there's really nothing that we can do to stop him. We created that beast, and we've enabled it to go as long as it has. So will he? Won't he? My bet is he's going to do something really stupid.
That doesn't make me feel good. So
no. No, the good news is we don't really have a whole lot of boots on the ground there. Yes, we've got forces, primarily special forces and logistics troops in Syria, a few still in Iraq, a few on the ground in Jordan, but it's not going to be a ground war for us. But still,
it's like, you're looking at possibly a hot war with Iran. What about in the Ukraine, where Ukrainian troops are now on Russian soil?
Well, that's good news for me as far as I'm concerned. Wars in general are bad for U.S. presidents, even if it's not our war. I mean, look, the Trumpies have been saying, well, if Trump gets in office, there won't be any more wars. Nonsense. But still, they use it as an issue. However, Ukraine, let's face it, first time. I mean, this is really a shocking headline. First time since 1944 that Russia has had foreign troops fighting on its soil. That's a pretty big headline, and it's not our headline. It's Russia's headline. Putin has now admitted to his public that they have a problem. He's of course downplaying it, but
Well, I mean,
they have a rumor network there too.
Well, I've read that it's only going to take about another 100,000 Russian troop casualties before basically Putin's out of soldiers.
I'm not going to put a number to it. Because I just think that's really difficult to do. And you're reading a lot of mood there. But at some point, somebody's going to, just as they are doing here, it seems, waking up and saying the emperor has no clothes.
Well, I think you've proven that with Russia. I mean, it's like everybody's talking about, this, fearsome fighting force. And it's like, no, I think that's been pretty much shown to be completely untrue. I mean, it's like we overestimated them, in the Cold War up until 1989. And then all of a sudden, Berlin Wall falls. And next thing you know, it's like all these countries are being freed up from the Soviet yoke. And, and for a while, Russia had the chance to actually become a democracy.
Well, so we had at our National Training Center in Fort Irwin, California, which is this massive place in the desert that is far from anywhere, and the Army can do almost anything it wants within reason. We had roughly 800 or so troops that were trained to fight like the Soviets back in the day, and they're still there. They keep changing who they're fighting like. Yeah, the red team, the OPFOR. And at the end of the Cold War, when we were finally doing these military exchanges with the Russians, we had a bunch of their senior officers out there to see what we were doing and showing how we had beaten the crap out of Iraq, just the year or so before. And they're watching this, and I had been there several times. I know what it looks like. You can stand on some of these mountains and look out and see the whole thing down before you, like some sort of map. It's just impressive as hell. And see, just 100 tanks, rolling across the battlefield. And the Russians are going, "My God, that's great. What is that?" And one of the officers, one of the Americans said, we're fighting like you. Don't you see it? He said, "We've never been able to do that."
Yeah. That I'm not surprised about. Absolutely not surprised.
I wasn't there. I heard the story. I want to believe it's true, but I can tell you that I believe it could be true that we did better at their game than they did. And when you look at what happened in Russia, I mean, I remember us talking about this, offline. Obviously, we weren't doing a show, and saying, "My God, what's happening with that convoy coming down from Belarus down to Kiev?" And I couldn't believe that they were somehow not meaning to do that, because it was such a ridiculous mistake. But yeah, that was just them being bad, them being very, very not professional and not good at what they were supposed to be good at doing.
Well, speaking of not being professional and good at what you're doing, I want to come back and talk about Trump in this country. And his apparent, he's brushing up on clinical psychiatric insanity. And I'm speaking as a physician now. And
carry on.
Most people don't realize, but I was actually going to be a psychiatrist up until my psychiatry rotation in medical school. And 10 minutes in, I said, nope, I'm not going to do that. So, it's the honest truth. So, anyway, when you're doing psychiatric diagnosis, you don't have to physically examine the patient. Now, it helps to rule out, medical reasons like, you're in a diabetic coma, or, there's other reasons you could be insane. But with Trump, and you don't have to be there physically to diagnose him. You can do it by watching him on TV, by getting reports from, his family, by friends, by colleagues, by people at work. Because that's actually how those diagnoses are done. In fact, a lot of psychiatry, not most, but a lot of it is actually now being done through telehealth. You can do like we're doing now. And it's like, I ask you a question, or, do you see things or hear things, depending on, how honest you are, most schizophrenics don't have an issue with that. But with Trump, you literally go down malignant narcissism, which is a DSM-5 diagnosis in the psychiatric manual. He hits literally every point down the line. And the problem that I'm seeing is that when a malignant narcissist gets pushed into a corner of losing, and especially losing face, that gets to be very dangerous. And you're seeing that with the way he's been acting. And it's like his advisors telling, stick to, our platform. He can't do that because this is about saving himself now. And it just keeps spiraling deep, and the more he loses, the deeper the spiral goes until finally you have what's called a psychotic break. And I think you're close to it now.
I think so. Did you hear him at all last night on the X?
I heard the replays. I can't sit there and do that live.
I couldn't do it either. I mean, at a certain point, she's like, this is nuts. And because it literally was nuts. But if you listen to him, just take out what he was saying, which was crazy. Talk about how he was saying and how he was presenting. He sounded like some old guy who had already taken his Ambien, plopped his teeth out, put it in the jar by his bedside. He was slurring his words. He was not, keeping track of anything. He was literally all over the map. And then, of course, it was the same old hits of, I've stolen election and, incompetent people and all of that. Everybody's fault but his.
Yeah, well, looking at, as a doc, drugs come up, at the top of the list, considering earlier in the day he wasn't slurring his words, having a stroke. That's how that starts out too. You come in and it's like, oh, I can't move my mouth, and you need to go to the ER and get a CAT scan stat.
Well, it certainly is poetic justice that the guy who made, the first part of his campaign all about making fun of another elderly man who, has elderly man issues like you and I both have.
Right. I mean, and along those lines, as much as I'm worried about him having that break, I'm also worried that you get to the point that, whoever still got some ability to be in charge in the GOP says, we can't have, this guy is clinically insane. We can't be putting this up because, people see with their own eyes. You can't hide it. And in fact, I think that's one of the things they're trying to do is they're not letting them go out in public, which is a strategy that's been used here in Arizona. There was a race a few years ago for the Secretary of Education, and there was this batshit crazy lady whose name I forget, and running up against a Hispanic guy who was, ex-teacher.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the crazy old Mormon lady.
Yeah.
And she was crazy.
Yeah. And anyway, High Ground Politics, which is a big time consulting firm here in Arizona, decided the best strategy is to keep her in the house locked away and not let her open her mouth because they knew she was batshit crazy. And the only way they would stand a chance is just, in fact, the only public appearance she made, there was one quote unquote debate they had to do. I'm pretty sure that they had sedated her out of her mind just so that she couldn't say much because every time she opened her mouth, it was a complete disaster. And so it worked. I had friends that were dyed in the wool, Trumplicans. I know they voted for Trump. They were voting for the Democratic candidate because they knew how crazy she was. But enough people out in the rural counties where they didn't see her and didn't get the TV stuff. So, we'll vote for her. And we had 4 years of insanity at the Department of Education.
No, I remember that. I think she was voted in. I want to say like in 2012 or something before Trump.
Like anyway, my point is, I think they're doing that with Trump now. I think so. There's been a lot of conjecture on that. That they're keeping him quiet and out of the view. Keep him out of view because it's Operation Let Them Open Their Mouth and Talk. It's working spectacularly well. Not only for him but also Vance. It's like, talk about a guy that just comes out and you just instantly dislike. It's just like, and it's
you would think you'd want to like him. He's not a bad looking guy. He's not. He's just a guy, but it's not like he looks. He doesn't look like Stephen Miller.
Right. It's like when he puts on that blonde wig. I've got it.
Well, that's special. But but he looks like a reasonable person, and he's young and he's youthful and all of that. And then he opens his mouth and it's like, what an idiot.
Well, I mean, you one, he has no soul. He has no moral compass.
Yeah.
It's to prostrate himself like he has done to become Trump's running mate.
Disgusting.
Yeah, it's like, why would you do that?
He makes Lindsey Graham look like he has backbone, for goodness sake.
I mean, if he was actually a good politician, the correct response would have been, to turn around to Trump and saying, "There's no fucking way I'm doing this," and for 28 and make himself look like I'm the guy that could stand up to Trump.
I forget which interviewer was doing it, but he was on an interview. I think it was Dana Bash on CNN, who pointed out to him that Trump had been confronted, and this was this weekend. Trump had been in an interview and was confronted by a reporter that says, something about, how do you deal with all these weird attacks? And Trump came back and said, well, they're not calling me weird. They're calling JD weird. And so she confronted him with that. And he had to swallow that on film, on camera, and say, well, he just totally, it was ridiculous looking. He looked like an idiot again.
Well, again, they keep fumbling the ball like that. So
it's looking weird because they're weird.
They're weird. So that brings up the point, is Trump going to be around? Does he, do you replace him? Can you replace him? Because, I know that for certain states, I think we're already over the line for some of them because, they're starting to make up ballots.
Yeah.
And so, short of, dying or, suffering a stroke and being completely incapacitated, you're stuck.
Well, even if you die, I know there have been elections in our country before
where the dead guy.
Yeah, where the dead guy got elected, and then they had to have another election afterwards. I don't know, and I would bet you that it goes down state by state. So Arizona may say, well, you can replace somebody, or the VP steps up, and Ohio may say, no, he's on the ballot. You got to vote for him or not vote for him. Let the voters decide. I do find it hard to believe that most Americans are going to vote for a dead guy, though, or somebody who's locked in a straitjacket, yammering to himself in a rubber room.
You have to go back to the "can anything happen?"
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting. I think we were talking before the show about a headline coming out saying, back in 1974, Americans were reaffirmed in their faith of the system. We stopped Watergate. Nixon was out. All was, at least back on track to being a righteous republic until Trump. And now what are we going to do? Because, you got to know, we got to do some serious rejiggering of laws in this country, and probably some rejiggering of the Constitution as well, with a few amendments, which Lord knows how that's going to happen. But
you've got to get 37 states to sign off on it. And
yeah, we still don't have an equal rights amendment, for goodness sake. We are about to, I believe, have a woman president, and yet she doesn't have the same employment rights as you and I.
Well, that's why this is such a crucial vote, because parsing through Project 2025 and all that's going to do, you're going to basically dismantle every safeguard we have in society.
Oh, 100%. The people who try to downplay it are either apologizing for fascism. There's no other way to say that, or they're just complete fools. It's one way or the other, because that's exactly how you create an authoritarian government, is by enacting what Project 2025.
Well, the thing is, their spiritual godfather is this blogger out on the West Coast. I think his name's Yarvin. And he's not only calling for the abolition of the Constitution, he wants a monarchy.
Yes.
God for real, hereditary monarchy.
Yes.
With, lords and earls and, the whole bit.
And that's who JT Vance pays attention to, and Peter Thiel and those tech bros with the billions.
That's just it. That if you go back and look at the medieval system, you had the king, his court advisors, and they look at the billionaire class. Will be the court advisors. We'll be telling the king what he really what he can and can't do, but he'll be in charge of the hoi polloi. And if you and if you try to go against the king, get your head cut off.
I mean, we'll get to do what we want to do. We'll make our billions, and nobody will tell us how to get it done. And of course we're going to be good. We don't want to destroy the world or anything, unless of course it gets in our way. And there we are. That's how we got global warming. It's because we just let them regulate themselves. That's how we get these every 10 or 15 year Wall Street crashes that are so bad, because we let them regulate themselves. And then we conveniently forget that, oh yeah, the reason why we put those rules in place was so this wouldn't happen again. And then somebody like Trump comes in and they get away with those rules, and there you are.
Yeah, you're right, about every 15 years or so, which is basically a generation.
Yeah.
So you have another generation. They were too young to really know what's happened. The older generation's gone, so your institutional memory is that much less. And so that's about right. You get to come in and totally rape the system again, and then government bails out all these corporations. So it's a continuation of, we're going to privatize the profits and socialize the risk and the losses.
By the way, this is just one of many arguments against term limits. Because when you have term limits and you say, okay, well, you can't be a legislator for more than 8 years or whatever the number is, then you don't get that institutional memory. Then you do have people wondering, why do we make that law again? And why can't we overtake? It's just getting in the way. That doesn't seem to make sense. So let's get rid of it, which is why Arizona's as messed up as it is. We've had term limits since what, 80?
Something like that. Yeah, I moved here in 87, and it's been like that since I've been here. And
yeah.
What I see is, somebody gets elected, they go, you can do 2 terms before you're termed out. And so, you've got Speaker of the House sometimes, having, literally
2 years.
2 years of experience.
Yeah.
And, lately, it's like this latest guy is some young guy who came in never having been a representative. Okay, we'll just make you Speaker of the House. So that way, hopefully, by year 3 or 4, you'll be pretty good at it. So.
Yeah. It takes some knowledge on how to work the system. It really does. And I mean, work the system in a good way. I'm sure somebody's going to, call me out on this, but working the system in the way that Joe Biden was able to work the system to get things done.
Well, exactly, because he was an institutionalist. He knew how to, who to talk to, how to talk to him, how to approach him. And, here in Arizona, we have none of that. So, which is why it's like right now, the Senate is 16-15 and every vote is 16-15.
Yeah.
And the House, it's like a 3-seat difference. Every vote is separated by 3 votes. I mean, every last one, they just vote partisan down the line. Nothing gets done.
Well, simply because it's near and dear to my heart, Arizona politics, even though I don't live there and will never live there again. What is, I mean, you circulate in those political arenas. What is the view towards Democrats actually taking control of all of government, or at least one of the houses of the legislature?
I think in the independents which is where this election is going to be won or lost. Yeah. I think they're getting more comfortable with it because it's one, a lot of the Democrats are people like me. It's like, I used to be a Republican, came over, so I guess I'm a dino and not a rhino. So, but, you don't have the AOC wing coming out and just saying, okay, we're going to come in, we're going to double taxes and, whatever. But you're going to have people that, it's like me. It's like, I like clean water. I like to have air that I don't see. It's clear.
Yeah. In Arizona, you can just say, I like water, and that will do.
Yeah,
period, just water.
I like water. I like food that's not got poisons on it.
Yeah.
And you can just keep going on and on. So it's like, I'm, part of that philosophy that government's there to be an arbiter, set the playing field. I'm not going to pick a winner, but I want a playing field. Everybody gets on at the same level. We play by the same rules, and if you don't play by the rules, these are the punishments.
Yeah. You don't get to play.
Yeah. You don't get to play, or, we shut your business down and shut it out.
Well, I think Democrats have displayed in Arizona that they can run a state, and they're doing a good job. I just saw Adrian Fontes, your Secretary of State. Is he the state? Yeah, he's Secretary of State, isn't he? Yeah.
Yes.
He was just on TV talking about the abortion, anti-abortion referendum, and I saw him. I met him when I was in the Flynn program, Flynn Brown program, and they brought in folks like him. He was still the Maricopa County secretary, and he was a super impressive guy. And he said there,
he'll be running for governor eventually.
Oh, sure. But he said, well, we've been taking a beating and this and that and the other, but I plan to run for Secretary of State. And everybody in the room was like, dude, Democrats don't win statewide offices in Arizona. And this was pre-Trump, I think. Yeah, no, it was after Trump had just won office. This was in 16 and 17. And, so the Republicans are riding high. But yeah, he has obviously Katie Hobbs and so many others now. So maybe so.
Yeah. So I look at Arizona is definitely, a paradigm for, I think, what can happen nationally. So it's like, this used to be, a ruby red state. People started seeing the dumb fuckery that was going on with that. And, and the Q Trump gets actually started back in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
With, oh God, what was that governor's name? Who was the Pickaninny governor?
Was it that wasn't Meekum, was he? No.
Yeah, Meekum. Yeah, Meekum.
It was me. Okay, yeah.
Who wins by accident, basically comes in and then starts doing batshit crazy stuff. So batshit that eventually his own party forced him out. Which is how
he was impeached, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was impeached, and that's how Rose Mofford became governor.
That's right. Yeah, it was Rose Mofford. Yep, forgot that.
She was Secretary of State at the time.
Yeah. It really is going to be interesting. I'd love to see that happen in Arizona. I think it certainly can happen. There's a lot of races I'm going to be watching on November 5th.
Well, here in Arizona, one of our big changes that our Constitution we're going to be voting on is to go to ranked choice voting.
Oh God, yes, that is way ahead.
A whole lot to cure the absolute batshit crazy stuff that goes on, because the way it is now, you have the hyper partisans, in the Republicans, if you're any place to the right, to the left of Genghis Khan, you can't make it through the primary. So the only people that are coming out are these Freedom Caucus.
This is how the Kerry Lake gets there. This is how Kelly Ward, got to where she was, because she's just batshit crazy, and all the other batshit crazy people think she's great.
Yeah, and so that was the entire Republican primary this time. Who could go the farthest to the right? Yeah. Now the good thing is not every hyper to the right Republican won, but they're all still in the thrall of Trump. So that still puts them way outside of the mainstream.
Well, you look at just the congressional delegation with Gosar and I can't even remember the one who's now running to be county supervisor, crazy lady from somewhere in the valley.
Lesko.
Debbie Lesko, and then I think I purged most of them from my memory, but all the ones who are the January 6th guys, and yeah, those are the batshit crazy ones that I don't know how you're going to get rid of.
Well, I think a lot of that's got to do with how they're districting. They just decided, we'll sacrifice a couple of districts. Mm-hmm. Take the Prescott. Sorry if you're a Democrat up there, but there's, we're going to put them all together. And then Debbie Lesko's district. That's the west side, which is Glendale and Peoria. It's like we're just going to sacrifice that. You're going to get somebody batshit crazy, but now we can make competitive districts that we can win. Yeah. And, and so I think this time around, last time we lost with Cisco Monte, beating out down in southeastern Arizona, Tucson. I think he's going to get beat this time.
I hope so. I hope so. I know I don't know her. worked with her when we were both running for a state office back in 16. Kirsten, I can't remember her last name. Really sharp lady, really smart, would have done very well, and so much more normal than Ciscomani. I mean, again, it's the weird people that the Republicans keep picking, and it keeps the normal people out.
Going with that, I think the real key now is we take Harris's momentum and get that momentum to go down ballot. It's like, because I know a lot of people that are saying I can't vote for Trump, but they're still Republicans. So then they go down ballot and they're, in the local, especially in the local elections, they just keep checking off that R.
Yeah, because they don't know, they don't pay attention to who those people are, what they say, what they do. They think, well, they're Republicans, so they're on my team. So,
well, and I think with Kerry Lake, it's like I'm not going to call the election already over, but I mean, I was at a Gallego fundraiser last week, and he's feeling pretty comfortable now. So
I hope so. I like him. I've met him too. He's a really smart guy, and he's done a great job, I think, in the House. I think he'd do an even better job in the Senate.
Well, again, you put him in the room with Kerry Lake, and it's again
night and day.
It's night and day, and you're going to take this woman whose only argument is that I'm kissing Trump's ass.
I'm more Trump than you are.
And then he's going to talk, and I mean, the guy's, he's the real deal. I mean, he was a working man, in the Army,
Marine Corps. He's a Marine
Corps, but he was a working man. Which I think plays really well with a lot of the electorate here. So, it's like the, the Harvard trained guy that, has gone into politics and, is a genuine guy. I mean, when you talk to him, you don't feel any artifice, which is really good.
Yeah. Well, I'm optimistic that's going to happen around the country now that we've got somebody at the top of the ticket that people can actually rally behind. And I'm not at all trying to slam Joe Biden. Joe Biden was caught in events that he couldn't manage, he couldn't control, that were beyond anybody's ability to deal with, and he just got tagged as the bad guy or the wrong guy. And him having the guts to step aside. The intelligence to see it and do the right thing.
I still think that debate was being pushed by people wanting to push him out. I think that came from the inside. So I wouldn't be surprised if people closest to him, Joe, you really need to go out there and debate him. Get this going now. Dude, you need to do
I don't know. I'm going to let you have that, but I'm not buying into it.
I'll take the win.
Take the win. Take the win. But regardless, here's where we are, and I think the convention is going to be a well-managed event where we almost literally see the baton passed and Kamala take the lead, as she already has done. But there'll be that ceremonial thing of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it'll be fine.
What I'm going to predict is day 1 or 2. Is going to be this homage to Joe Biden, like basically just like this,
celebration.
A big time celebration.
A celebration of service.
Yeah, celebration of service being lauded by person after person after person.
He's getting a lifetime Oscar.
Yes, he's going to get a lifetime Oscar. And then you just keep going with the party. I mean, we've got all the good music, so.
Well, true, and the musicians the artists will actually let us play it, and we'll show up and play it themselves, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's like today, Isaac Hayes' estate just sent a cease and desist letter to the Trump campaign for.
Did you see that? The French Canadian singer who did the Olympics. Yes, Celine Dion sent a cease and desist letter about how Trump had used the theme from the Titanic, and at the bottom of it, she said in italics, "And you chose that song?"
Oh, I know. I mean, talk about an unforced fumble leading to a touchdown. I mean, and the thing is, the crowd there didn't get it. They're, oh, wow, great song. And it's like, you do realize this is about something that hits an iceberg and sinks. Oh,
well, their love will go on. So
yes, well. So.
Well, okay. I know we're getting close to the end here. I think what I would like to ask, posing the question for next week, is as we go into this convention, will MAGA, forget Trump, he'll be done, but will MAGA live on? Is there going to be another life of this zombie MAGA movement carrying on, or will it just go down in flames?
Well, those people that are maggots, they're not going to go away. They're going to be there. But what I predict is that the GOP, this may be their last hurrah, and it's going to depend on how badly they get beat.
Yeah.
If they get totally destroyed, we keep we regain the House, keep the Senate, which I think is doable if Tester can pull it out of Montana. West Virginia, that's gone. That's a lost cause. But we've got 2 other states that we could pick up that are currently held by Republicans, and so you do that. We keep the Senate. Then we have the trifecta. You're going to be able to do a lot of the stuff that we want done. And so, I think that it keep the grand old party Republican name and not be like the Whigs who just went out of existence. But if you look at the parallels between the Whigs and the GOP where they are now, it's
pretty strikingly close.
It's running it pretty close, and so this brand becomes so toxic that it's not worth salvaging the brand name.
Well, I can tell you, I will, regardless of what the brand does in the next 8 to 15 to 20 years, I will never vote for a Republican again. And as one who used to be a Republican like you, I never thought I would say that. But no, I was never a single party voter, but I would never have excluded a party. But anybody who wants to attach their name to that party now is toxic to me.
Well, because the party is now the party. It's a cult of Trump. It's one person. And, if you're still in the party with him, then you get all those fleas, all that mud all over you, and you will never, ever get the stink off.
No, there ain't enough soap and wire brushes in the world to get rid of that.
So anyway, I think there's a really good possibility that, yes, the GOP, as we know it, goes away. Now, most of the people that are in the GOP hate Trump. When you get them in private, they will all tell you, we cannot stand this guy. Ted Cruz in private will tell you how much he hates him. Out in public, it's like kissing his ass.
Yeah,
because they're so afraid of his voters.
Ted Cruz is the proto Vance.
Exactly. Well, so anyway, we'll have plenty to talk about next week.
Oh, yeah. Well, if nothing else, next week will be day 2 of the convention. And because it's in Chicago, as I said last week, I will be trying this terrible stuff called Malort, the nasty cocktail liqueur of Chicago. And you're going to get the live reaction here on this show, on this channel. So
I'm from Kentucky. I'll have a bourbon.
I might have to have a bourbon chaser just to get it out of my mouth. All right. Well, that's it for me.
Yeah, it's like everybody that was here. Thank you very much. I just wanted to point out that we do answer questions. You put up a comment, and we'll please feel free and do so.
And we'll be talking about a guest as well.
Absolutely. We may even have a second guest next week.
Cool.
So
all right.
That'll be a surprise for you too.
We'll see what happens. All right, guys. Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
Everybody, thank you. We'll see you next week.